Hey Trance family, Brandon Beatty Trance. Welcome to the 16th video in our series where we've been putting together an uplifting trance track completely from scratch. If you're tuning in for the first time, please take a minute to check out, well, it's going to be a couple, many minutes to check out the whole series where I show you how I built this track from literally step by step. And you can even use these techniques to build your own track in any software. You can use these techniques literally in any software. And in this video, we're going to talk about mixing the track, okay? So I kind of been mixing the track and balancing it the whole time, right? I think that's sort of vital when you're composing something as big as trance. You know, it's going to be difficult to keep track of the composition if we're not mixing it properly. But to sort of review the whole mixing theory that I was using for all these elements, and not only that, we're going to go through each element now and EQ it and clean it up and just make sure that we've done everything we can to make them sound the best. So we're going to mostly focus on soloing elements sort of one at a time, but also soloing them together, okay? So it's all about referencing. That's the most important thing. So we don't EQ things just because we're being told, oh, just cut it here, this and that. It's really all about using your ears and comparing. And well, not only that, not comparing, but referencing, right? Because EQ for one element in one track, or how do I say this? The EQ that works on the lead in this track might not work on the lead in another track, because you have to really use your ears and determine what the actual issue that we're trying to solve is, okay? And my goal is to hopefully teach you guys how to how to figure out what issues we're trying to solve. And I think we're going to start with the kick and bass because that's the foundation of the mix. We're going to use span. Again, this is really important if you don't have span. This is a free plugin, a really great plugin. And we're going to use this to keep an eye on the mix, balance everything properly. And again, let's start with the kick. And I guess I'll show you the whole, maybe like the whole loop that we're going to work on. I think we'll work on, you know, it makes sense to kind of mix the loudest part of the music. So we can start at the climax where everything kind of comes in. I think right here might be the fullest. And let's go ahead and just sort of solo our rhythm section just to get an idea of what we're dealing with here. Okay. And let's pull up span. So my goal was to make sure that everything is balanced sort of on the same line here, but also creating enough space in the mid-range for more elements as well. And this just sort of naturally happens with the percussion section. Okay. So for the kick, we've already sort of dealt, you know, we don't need to do too much EQ. I think what we're going to do is definitely drop in fab filter and cut out the low, anything below 20 hertz. So we're just going to put a basic high pass filter in. We're just going to dial it in to about 20. That's just going to kind of clean up any low end rumble. And if we need to, we can clear a little bit of room in the sub bass to get the kick a little bit clearer. So let's go ahead and compare the kick and the sub bass. Okay. And let's see how that, you're not going to really see the sub bass unless we pull the kick out. Okay. I don't think the kick is buried at all. I feel like I can hear it pretty clearly. Okay. And again, with the sub bass, we want it somewhere about 6 decibels lower than the kick. So our kick was about around the 48 mark, and our sub is again about 6 decibels lower. And that's because we can allow the mastering is going to sort of compress the kick and sub bass together. So you don't have to worry too much about trying to get the sub bass to really push through the mix. Again, during mastering, it's going to get compressed together, and having more times than not, the mastering engineer is going to tell you to pull the sub bass back. You know, that's a common issue I've had, is like you're trying to push the sub bass because you want to hear it really loud, but it's just not necessary. Okay, so that's my first tip when dealing with sub and kick. Okay, so I'm happy with those. And once we have the sub down, that's when we can mix in our sort of mid bass, like our low mid bass. Okay, and this is like a bass that just kind of hits right here in this pocket, just above the sub bass. Okay, without the sub. See how the sub fills in this space right here? This mid bass fills in right there. And then we have our rolling basses, which are going to fill out the rest of the space here. But notice how there's space below the rolling bass for our sub bass and our other mid bass. Okay, so I'm just gonna make sure the EQ. And when I did that one bass, I think I showed you guys, if you remember in the video, we just really cut. We used the EQ to literally cut out like a small section of that bass. I'm just cleaning it up because I want to be able to hear some of the root notes. If this is too high, we'll actually be cutting some of the root note out of the bass, and then it kind of starts to sound like out of tune. Just tune it a little bit more. Okay, I think I like it right there. And all I did for the mid basses was on the bus, I took it out, or so I did a high pass around like 180 or so. And I do have this Q on the overall EQ because this is the EQ that's sweeping everything in, and having that little Q there helps give it just a little bit of a telephone effect and cut through the mix a little bit. Okay, so we'll put that in with the kick. Everything's nice and balanced. And look at that. And the kick, right, is these elements are being separated by time. So the kick happens, then the basses happen. So even though it's sort of taking up the same space, they're separated by time. Well, you can see how it fills out those spaces. It just sort of fills that space in between. All right. And I'm also trying to hit certain levels on the mix bus. So for example, I'm trying to make sure that the mid basses are hitting around -18 or -20, and the kick is sort of around -15 or so. And percussion, I try to keep at about the same energy as the rolling basses. So my percussion section is usually around -20 as well. I'm not sure if that's all. Yeah, hi-hat bus. with the open hat, right? Okay. So when it comes to mixing in the percussion elements, I guess one way I can show you guys is, yeah, again, we're gonna pull up the kick, and then we're gonna bring in the hats, and they should sort of fill in, again, that's those spaces in between the frequencies of the kick and stuff. It should fit in kind of nicely right there. Okay, so we have all that space right here. We're gonna fill it up with the hi-hats. Now, if when we turn the hi-hats on and they're going way past the kick in volume, it's too loud. So we want them just kind of nestled below the kick. Okay. So again, it's about 6 decibels below the kick. And this is how I'm sort of using span, is these blocks is 6 decibels each. Okay. And so if I'm trying to separate one element, I'm almost trying to have it like 6 decibels away from the kick like that. You'll kind of notice that's like a pattern. Like either the sound is sort of sitting here, it's sitting here, or like the pads might sit down here. And again, that's our dynamic range, okay? And leads are gonna sit on top of the mix and be around in this area. So we can kind of test that by bringing in like our vocal lead that I have. Let's see, where's it at? There it is. Is that gonna come in at this part? There it is. So might even be a little bit loud, but it kind of works, I think, in this mix because it's such a thin sound. So we really do need to push it a bit. Okay. We'll bring in the basses. So I would say anything that definitely goes past this line, past the 36, is going to be way too loud. So I'm trying to keep the mix somewhere between this range of 6, 12, 18, about like 18 decibels or so. Lower, I guess 24 decibels of dynamic range. Okay. And we can also pull up the piano. And so it's kind of good to compare the leads and stuff with the kick drum and the rhythm section. So this is sort of my process. And we'll even pull up like the crash or, you know, one element. Actually, let's talk about the clap. So let's pull up the kick. Okay. And let's do the clap. Yeah, sort of filling in that area, and this is another sound I try to have at about -20, so it's supposed to be somewhere around where the hats are sitting. So we'll take this out, we'll put the hats in. So the hats are kind of higher up, and then the clap is kind of filling out more of that space right there. And so far, I think we just have the lead. Oh, you know, we could talk about the pads since those are going to get kind of buried into the mix. So that's the saw bus. We want the pad bus. Okay. So the pads is probably one of the lowest elements in the mix, where if you can see here, I have the pads sitting at about -25. So again, some of the other sounds was sitting around -20. The pads is going to sit around like -25. They're really just kind of filling in the background space. You see that? So let's compare that with the kick. And again, I have the pads gated. And the effects should sit sort of somewhere where the pads are sitting. So again, I have effects at about -25 as well. So that crash. Let's see here. Yeah, that's at -25. But even though it says -25, it's still like visually appears loud. Might even be a little too loud. I might turn that down just a little bit, to be honest. There you go. I just pulled it back. Just a couple decibels, and that seems to be doing pretty nice. Okay, we got the ride. Ride is something that's very high energy, so I'm not putting that too loud into the mix either. Okay. Again, make sure it's sitting below the kick. And we'll take a look at the saw bus, and that's almost about it. Now I might for that, I think we're gonna do like some kind of dip around like 5K, just because it's really filling out that high end space. I'm wondering if I should even do like sort of a cut, like a high cut. Oh, I did, but it doesn't seem like it's even doing anything. Let's see what happens if we take that out. Yeah. Might even go down to like 17,000. Oops. And we'll combine that with everything else. I think it's clashing with the cymbals a little bit. We're just gonna pull down maybe about 5K or so. Just pull it back about, we'll try 1 decibel first. Again, we want to be gentle with these EQ cuts. You don't need to come in and be like, just pulling the thing out, guys. These sounds already sound good by themselves. We're just trying to create a little bit of space, okay? So, we maybe make like a 2 decibel cut and see what that sounds like. I do like that because I can hear like the ride a little bit better. It's definitely creating space, and I still hear the lead. Okay. So let's pair that with some more elements. And a sound like the lead, I'm trying to get the full bus to hit about -15, almost sort of the same level as the kick drum. So where's our saw bus here? Here it is. So here you can see it. Not bad. With that, and we'll pull in the lead, the vocal, just make sure that sounds good over there. like everything's pretty balanced. I can hear just about everything. We just didn't put the pads in yet. We got the piano in there as well. And that, we just want to make sure it's not clashing with the lead voice because they're sitting in about the same area. But there's also the spot where the piano is a little bit lower. Okay. And that we compare against the pads just to see how that sounds together. I'm going to try this spot. So see, we have everything, we just have all of the elements sort of balanced in the same range. You can see how, like, if I pull out that bass pad, there's space for it, and we know it's the right volume because it makes sense, it fills in. And again, we don't need bass elements going really, really loud. You can pull back the bass a little bit, you know, you don't have to, just get it within this range. Okay? And once we've gone through every element and balanced them nicely, and you can hear sort of everything that you need to hear, I'm not sure if anything else is really clashing. Like, I think the piano sounds kind of nice against her voice. I mean, if anything, I've already done, okay, I did do just a little bit of EQ to the piano, so I did pull out about 1K just to, again, make space for her voice. Not much, not doing these big movements. And you know, we could even talk about the acid sounds. I don't know if we talked about all the effects, but same thing with these white noise effects and stuff. We want them about the same level as the crash cymbal. Okay, see, again, balance. Everything's balanced towards the kick. Not going past it. And it's doing enough that we can see it filling in those spaces right there. Like a riser and stuff. And same with the acids. We get them to fit around, like sit somewhere around the bass, like the mid basses. That up real quick. And if you have to, you can just maybe pull back around the 1K. So that's really all I did. And this is about 500. That seemed to be where it was like resonating too much. Sorry, maybe I shouldn't have talked when the music is playing, but so it was about 500 hertz is what I pulled out. And anyways, like the point is though, when we put all these elements together, if we do the mix correctly, our VU meter on the output here should be, if we put a VU meter on the master bus, the whole mix should sit somewhere around 0. So it's fine, again, if we're hitting past 0, especially at the loudest parts. We just don't want to be like pushing into past like +3, you know. So the fact that I mixed all these elements together and we're just going like 1 decibel over, that's really, really great. Also, we want to keep in mind, like in the lighter parts, it should maybe sit around 0. So like here. Okay. Maybe it's my kick. Maybe my kick just needs to come down about a decibel. Nice. I think that sounds right. It sounds nice. Okay. So as long as our mix is sort of doing this on a VU meter, all right, we're doing good. Like we can send this to the mastering engineer for sure. And at this point, we're close enough that the mastering engineer, when you send it to them, this is why I like working with a great mastering engineer, is they're going to listen to the mix and they're going to be like, hey, listen, you know, I listened to it on my system. I think the sub bass is too loud. They'll even be like, at this one spot, there was like too much sub bass, pull back the kick here or something. And they'll know like, hey, push the sub bass 1 or 2 decibels, or pull back the lead. They'll say, hey, high cut some of the cymbals is too harsh at this spot. And so we'll get the final sort of tailoring or details from the mastering engineer. The point is we just want to create a nice flat mix, okay? We want the leads on top of the mix. Everything should be about like here. Again, the mastering engineer, he can pull the kick up. He can get the bass area matched with the high end if he has to. If the high end's a little too much, they can do what they need to balance it out. Or if they can't do it, they'll let you know what's wrong with the track. Pretty close. Yeah, I think it's good enough. All right, guys, so thanks for hanging with me. Next video, we're going to talk about a basic mastering chain that I use to sort of demo my music. And, you know, I do a disclaimer is like, you know, it's never going to be as good as a true mastering engineer, but it's a good way to sort of preview it or take it out onto another system. But, you know, mastering, you got to be cautious with because you can easily ruin the track, make it hard to listen to. But all right, guys, I know this is a little bit of a long video, but hope you learned something. Thanks for sticking with me, and I'll catch you guys on the final video, and we'll put this project to rest. All right.